Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you are catching this. And welcome to day 4 of our Miracle Mindset push ups. So let's do a quick little review of what we've learned thus far. Day number 1 was a new beginning. We were learning how to set up our day with spirit. Day number 2 was all about forgiveness and the 3 levels of forgiveness. Day number 3 was all about happiness and how we really don't know our own best interests. And which is going to lead us in to day number 4, the ego. So let's start at the very beginning. What is the ego? Well, the ego, according to A Course in Miracles, is nothing more than the idea of separation. That's it. So I'm going to say it again. The ego is nothing more than the idea of separation. Take a deep breath with that. Like, just really feel into that. The ego is not a power, it is not a force, it is an idea. That's nothing more than that, an idea. So then, now that we kind of have a more generalized understanding of the ego is just an idea, where did this idea come from? Well, this idea came from the, we're going to start all the way back at the very beginning, if you will. So, in the beginning, we were all one. And in truth, we are all still one. However, we decided to play a game of what if. Well, what if I could be separate from my source? What if I could be separate from love? What if I could make my own, make my own universe? What if I could make my own rules? And we got lost in that game. Okay, we got lost in it. And so since we got lost in that game, all that's where the ego comes in. Because the ego is that idea of separation, being able to be separated from your source. So the ego made the world. Okay, it made this illusionary world and it peopled it. And yes, I'm using peopled as a verb here because that's what the ego did. It peopled the world. It made these bodies and it made them a variety of different shapes, sizes, colors, genetic material. It just made them all very different. Then we separated, if you will, only in our minds, not in truth, but we separated into these bodies, into these separate vessels. And we are still make believing that we have a separate mind. We have separate, basically we're just believing in separation. We're believing that we have separate minds, separate thoughts, separate feelings, so forth and so on. And we are playing that game right now. That's what we're doing. And the ego has made, and you're noticing that I'm not using the word create. I'm using the word made because that's all the ego can do. The ego cannot create, it can only make illusions, it cannot create reality. Okay, I'm going to say that again. The ego can only make illusions, it cannot create reality. Okay, so as we, are playing this game of what if, the ego wants to keep us distracted. Okay, it doesn't want us to look at what it made. It says, don't look too close at that. Here, look, squirrel. It's distracted. Ooh, look, shiny. It's really trying to distract us because the ego has made an identity for itself, saying, I am this personality, I am this body, I am this. This is all that I am. And so it's made this distinction for itself. And it has made it as a mask that we are wearing to make us believe that we are not eternal in nature, that we are small, that we are finite, that we only have this, that's it. We only have this one time and that's it. That is what the ego is doing. It also wants to prove to, basically to the divine, look, and if it proves it to the divine, it means it really wants to prove it to the truth, saying, look, death is real. Death is a real thing, and I want you to believe it. And it's always trying to distract us from going within and seeking the truth, because the truth is within us. It is within our own minds. It's just the ego has a lot of distracting thoughts to try to keep us from looking at that truth. Now, the ego really only has one trick, and it's fear. And that fear is, once again, it's about illusions. It's never real. Okay. And there's actually several Course in Miracles lessons that I'm going to read to you guys, and you guys can practice them. I don't recommend practicing them both in one day. I do recommend practicing, one day, and then the next day you practice the next one, not doing two at the same time. That way you can get the benefit of each lesson individually, because that's how the course is built. The course is built to build upon itself. So that is something that we're going to do. We are going to read these two lessons. Now, one of the lessons is I am never upset for the reason that I think I am. And then our other lesson that we're going to read is I can escape the world I see by giving up my attack thoughts. And so, with both of these lessons, the crux of it is that the ego is always projecting. Okay? It's always putting the guilt, the shame, the blame, it's putting it out here because it says, oh my God, if I actually accept this, like this is what I've made. And if they start to catch on that, they don't like this feeling, I need to put it out here and I need to put it on other bodies. So that way, they continue the game of separation. That way they continue to do that because it looks like this other person is guilty. And it looks like, it's this person's fault or this body's fault or this situation's fault. One of the lines from A Course in Miracles is that we have to remember the world is never happening to you. It is always happening from you because you are the one who is making it. It's coming from your thoughts. That's where the world is really coming from, your own thoughts. And from those thoughts come your perceptions, so forth and so on. And there's actually David Hoffmeister, a teacher of A Course in Miracles, and he talks about the levels of mind. And it actually goes all the way down, and it starts at desire. Then it goes from, there's desire, then there's the belief, then there's the thought, then there's the emotion, then there's the perception. Okay, and that's kind of how it works. So there's a desire. Let's say your desire is that you want to be in a loving relationship, but let's say that you don't believe that you're worthy of that, which then creates feelings or emotions of unworthiness, which then creates thoughts of unworthiness, which then creates the emotion of unworthiness, which then makes the perception that you see that you are unworthy. Let's say, you want to get in a relationship with someone, but then all of a sudden, they break up with you, or it just kind of ends abruptly, and you're like, what's happening? But once again, that's because we're seeing it from the ego's perception. It's the other person's fault. Or if it's not the other person's fault, don't worry. If the ego can't attack someone else, it's going to attack itself, which means it's going to attack you. And that's what we have to remember, is that the ego is you. It knows you better than anybody else because it is you. It's just your own intelligence attacking you, turned against you, which is why it knows the buttons to press, the situations in which to go in, the patterns that will keep you distracted, which will keep you in fear. It knows all those things because it's you. But like I said, it's because you're giving it that focus. It in itself has no power. It only has the power that you give it. And as we do these two lessons, you're going to see and be like, wow, okay, so if I recognize that this is a perception from my lower mind, my ego mind, and I don't like what I see, then instead of me trying to change the world, let me change my mind about it. That's actually a famous quote from A Course in Miracles. Do not attempt to change your mind, but do not attempt to change the world, but attempt to change your mind about it. And the beauty is you have all this help from Spirit helping you to see different perceptions. So let's go ahead and let's go to our two lessons for today. And our first one was number 5. I am never upset for the reason that I think I am. This idea, like the preceding one, can be used with any person, situation, or event you think is causing you pain. Apply it specifically to whatever you believe is the cause of your upset, using the description of the feeling in whatever term seems accurate to you. The upset may seem to be fear, worry, depression, anxiety, anger, hatred, jealousy, any number of forms. And remember, all of those forms are nothing more than fear. It's just fear, once again, because the ego is all about separation, it's all about distraction. It says, well, if you look at anxiety, look, you're anxious. It's not fear, it's I'm anxious, or worry, or hatred, or depression. If you look at depression, depression is the belief in a lack of their fear that you don't have something that you need. So it's once again just goes back to fear. But the ego loves to show you, oh, look, no, look, there's so many different facets to this. Oh my God, it's so complex. It's not complex at all. It's just the ego wants us to see complexity, but we can look with spirit and we can see simplicity because everything that the ego makes, spirit can use for the coming of your peace, not for your destruction. Okay, this is not, so let's see, anxiety in all its forms, all of which you will perceive as different. This is not true. However, until you learn that form does not matter, each form becomes a proper subject for the exercise for today. Applying the same idea to each of them separately is the first step in ultimately recognizing they are all the same. So, like I said, fear, anxiety, worry, hatred, depression, it's all fear. It's just the ego wants you to see it from its perspective, which is they're all separate. And then now it's super complex. And there's actually a really good example I like to use when it comes to, past lives. Yes, past lives can be super duper helpful in helping you discern, some of your past patterns, which is a whole different other talk, but it can assist you in that. But what tends to happen is then the ego takes hold of that and it says, okay, so yeah, your mom, the reason that you and your mom maybe have like a weird relationship or a strained relationship is because she was your slave, um, or she was your slave driver in a past life. Well, then you go back to another past life, and then, you were the slave driver and she was the slave. Then you go back to another past life. Then you go back to another one and another one. Then it goes all the way back to like a parallel reality where she was a green Gumby monster and you were a blue Gumby monster and you didn't like each other. And it will just keep going and 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 going because that's the ego. It wants you to go down the rabbit hole of complexity, never looking at the true purpose. Because what is the ego's number one goal? Separation. When using the idea for today for a specific perceived cause of an upset in any form, use both the name of the form in which you see the upset and the cause which you ascribe to it. For example, I am not angry at blank for the reason that I think. I am not afraid of blank for the reason that I think. But again, this should not be substituted for practice periods in which you first search your mind for sources of upset in which you believe and form of upset which you think is the result. In these exercises, more than in the preceding ones, you may find it hard to be indiscriminate and to avoid giving greater weight to some subjects than to others. It might help to precede the exercise with this statement: there are no small upsets. They are equally disturbing to my peace of mind. So there's no small upsets and there's no big upsets. There are simply upsets, and each one is a disturbing to your peace of mind. Then examine your mind for whatever is distressing you, regardless of how much or how little you think it is doing so. You may find yourself less willing to apply today's idea to some perceived sources of upset rather than others. If this occurs, then think to yourself this: I cannot keep this form of upset and let others go, for the purpose of this exercise, then I will regard them all the same. Then search your mind for no more than a minute or so and try to identify a number of different forms of upset that are disturbing you, regardless of the relevance or importance you may give them. Apply the idea for today to each of them, using the name of both the source of the upset and as you perceive it, and of the feeling you are experiencing. Further examples are, I am worried about blank for the reason I think. Or I am not worried about blank for the reason that I think. I am not depressed about blank for the reason that I think. 3 or 4 times during the day is enough. So all you have to do, number one, if something comes up and it's disturbing your peace and you're like, ooh, this is, I've moved from maybe happiness, joy, contentment, and now moving into anger, frustration. Okay, number one, I am not frustrated at blank for the reason that I think. So you can use that in a split second. Now, for the longer practice periods, you can take just a minute. You can just be like, okay, let me search my mind for things that are upsetting me right now. And you can do the exact same thing, except you are more conscious of it. And you're saying, okay, now I'm looking at this. So, maybe financials are on your mind and you're really worried about that. Well, I'm not worried about my finances for the reason that I think. Okay. Then we're going to go to, so that was lesson number 5. Now we're going to go to lesson 25. And we are going to read that one. Remember, do not do both of these lessons in one day. Do lesson number 5, day 1. Do lesson number 25, day 2. The reason that I invite you to do that is so you can get the benefit of both exercises. Okay, so number 25. I do not know what anything is for. Purpose is meaning. Today's idea explains why nothing you see means anything. Oh, I'm sorry, that is not the correct lesson. My bad. Sorry about that. That is, I do not know what anything is for. Sorry, it was lesson number 23 that we are practicing. I can escape from the world I see by giving up my attack thoughts. The idea for today contains the only way out of fear that will ever succeed. I really like that sentence. It's a very powerful sentence, so I'm going to read it again. The idea for today contains the only way out of fear that will ever succeed. Nothing else will ever work. Everything else is meaningless. But this way cannot fail. Every thought you have makes up some segment of the world you see. And of course, it does that because remember, you're the projector. You are making the world you see. You are making the images. That includes you're making the people. Because remember, the ego is all about that separation. So it wants you to see separate people, separate things, separate cans, separate bedrooms, whatever it may be. It is your thoughts then that we must work with. If your perception of the world is to be changed, if the cause of the world you see is your attack thoughts, you must learn that it is these thoughts you do not want. There is no point in lamenting the world. There is no point in trying to change the world. It is incapable of change because it is merely an effect. What is it an effect of? Is an effect of our thoughts. We are the cause of the world. Remember, like I said, the world is not coming at you, it's coming from you. Or the world is not happening to you, it's happening from you. But there is indeed a point in changing your thoughts about the world. Here you are changing the cause. The effect will change automatically. The world you see is a vengeful world, and everything in it is a symbol of vengeance. Each of your perceptions of external reality is a pictorial representation of your own attack thoughts. One can well ask if this can be called seeing. Is it not fantasy a better word for such a process? A hallucination a more appropriate term for the result? You see the world that you have made. Okay, once again, made, not created. Because making means that you made something, now you can unmake it. But you do not see yourself as the image maker. You cannot be saved from the world, but you can escape from its cause. This is what salvation means. Now, salvation to me, like I said, the Course uses very traditional, like Christian terms in very non traditional ways. And so I like to say the word salvation actually means happiness. Okay, so salvation means for where is the world you see when the cause is gone? Vision already holds a replacement for everything you think you see now. Loveliness can light your images, and so transform them that you will love them even though they were made of hate. You will not be making them alone. So once again, it's really inviting us to invite spirit. The idea for today introduces the thought that you are not trapped in the world you see because its cause can be changed. You can change your mind. This change requires first that the cause be identified and then let go so that it can be replaced. The first two steps in the process require your cooperation, the final one does not. Your images have already been replaced. By taking the first two steps, you will see that this is so. Besides using the thought throughout the day as needed, 5 practice periods are required in applying today's idea. As you look about you, repeat the idea slowly to yourself first, and then close your eyes and devote about a minute to searching your mind for as many attack thoughts as occur to you. As each one crosses your mind, say, I can escape from the world I see by giving up my attack thoughts about blank. Hold each attack thought in your mind as you say this, and then dismiss the thought and go to the next. In the practice periods, be sure to include both your thoughts of attacking and of being attacked. Their effects are exactly the same because they are exactly the same. You do not recognize this as yet, and you are asked at this time only to treat them as the same in today's practice periods. We are still at the stage of identifying the cause of the world you see when you finally learn that thoughts of attack and of being attacked are not different. You will be ready to let go of the cause. So, absolutely beautiful 2 lessons to practice. And our journaling prompts, that if you want journaling prompts, are simply where am I wearing the ego's mask in the world? Where am I identifying myself as the things I do, or as the or just as a label? Where am I really labeling myself, pigeonholing myself? Where is that happening in my life? Like when you introduce someone, you be like, "Hi, my name's Ron Schaefer. I am an intuitive and an entrepreneur, and I run my own spiritually based business. I'm also a spiritual mentor, and I read A Course in Miracles, and I'm a student of A Course in Miracles. I also teach A Course in Miracles." Is that how you introduce yourself? Because then you're not really introducing you, you're introducing your labels. I just like to say, hi, my name is Ron. Now, in my head, I am saying, I am the light of the world. And it is a pleasure to meet another light of the world. That's how I like to look at it. That doesn't mean that you have to do that. It's just something that I like to practice. So that way I do my best not to see separation and not just introduce myself as an ego. Yes, in the world of form, do I say, hi, my name is Ron Schaefer? Yes. But in my mind, I can still say, hi, I am the light of the world. It's a pleasure to meet another light of the world. Done. So that is your day number 4 lesson. I know that was kind of a long one for today. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you soon.